Can you come up a little bit closer there? Okay. All right, hey folks, welcome back to Chris Wyatt Reports. This is Chris live in an undisclosed location somewhere in the Eastern Cape. No, I'm just kidding. In the last program, we had interviews and we talked about being in Mpumalanga and the Northern Cape, so I figured the Eastern Cape would work this time. But I'm here with, I'll make sure I get this correctly, Wynand Engelbrecht.
Wynand Engelbrecht, yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
So not too bad. The Engelbrecht's easy for me because I got German, but the Wynand always throws me off. So, just like Wynand du Toit. So he is here, you're the chief of this fire service, is that correct?
Yes.
So we're talking about private fire service in South Africa. And can you tell me a little about the organization and what the need for it is? I presume that there was probably a need for it and that's why it exists.
Yeah, we go back 7 years, next month it's 7 years, that I realized that there was a definite vacuum in the service delivery arena, and that the time was ripe to offer a private service to end users that would require such an offering. And it turned out to be a decision that was well taken at just the right time, commercially now. Also, in an operational sense, it turned out to work out well for us. We have attended in these 7 years to over 3,000 building fires.
Good Lord.
Yeah, and it's just this morning I called a young lieutenant, and he's only been with us for 2.5 years. He's already been on 1,200 building fires.
Wow.
Yes, it's
insane.
Incredible, incredible. Well, and it's the central Gauteng footprint that I'm talking about.
There's a massive population.
It's a massive population, and I don't think it's all that exceptional. I believe. Oh, my guess, my best guess, is that in this footprint that we're talking, there may be somewhere between 8 and 12 building fires a day. But those that get extinguished by the homeowner or the business owner, you just never hear of it afterwards. So it's not reported anywhere. So it doesn't make up any part of the national database, which is not even in place. It's not even managed almost at all. There is no database, so we don't know how many fires we have in South Africa. And so there's been exercises of trying to do this over the years, but it's never really been successful. And so 7 years ago, yes, it was, the time was right, and I did have a stint in the Middle East with some of the officers that are still with us. And we came back, and it so happened that when we spoke to some of the corporates, they immediately showed interest in what we were about to do. And they helped us actually becoming what we are today. So we have a very wide client base right over this footprint. We opened a fire station in Bloemfontein just a few weeks ago. And we've already got staff in KwaZulu-Natal. We'll be sending vehicles there and probably be operational in about 3 weeks' time.
Well, that's amazing. I've got so many questions to ask, but I imagine that starting a service like this can be challenged from a lot of perspectives. Number one, finding qualified firefighters. It's not, you can't just grab a note off the street and say, here, tamp the fire down. You got to know about backdraft. You got to understand all the hazards because it's very dangerous. And there's different types of fires. An auto fire is very different than an apartment fire, is very different than a factory fire, and so on. Getting the right personnel, I imagine, is a challenge, and we can talk about it a little bit. But it's also a capital-intensive business, is it not? You have to have fire trucks and equipment, which costs a fortune. I know this because we have volunteer firemen back home, and we're constantly trying to raise money for them because they're not supported by taxpayers, and they don't have corporate clients, so the community raises money for them. So I imagine it's capital intensive, and what about training and finding the right firefighters?
Let's first look at the comparison with the American system. In America, you've got something like 2 million volunteer firefighters, which I think your challenge is coming now in the next generation. That
it's already here.
The commitment
it's already
from the third generation now.
We're consolidating fire stations because we don't have enough volunteer firefighters.
You won't have them. Where you had the grandfather and the father and then the son, and now the next generation, I think it's going to be seriously difficult for America to maintain that system. So here we've never really been able to operate with volunteers. I think there were 3 cities over all the years. I'm now 51 years around firefighting, since 1973. And in all of these years, I've only seen 3 cities where volunteer systems really worked, and that would have been Centurion, which was then Verwoerdburg, and it was Bedford View, and it was Sandton. And I was involved in Sandton for many years as commander of a task force there. And so those 3 cities, and they're all affluent cities. For some reason, it was easier for those kind of people to get involved with volunteers. So our company has almost no volunteers. They're all paid firefighters. And we had to take a different approach on it. And we started with an operational doctrine that proved that we needed smaller crews. And the operational doctrine, we turned to UHP for that. So we work with ultra high pressure. We work at 90 bar to 170 bar. And we work with 2-man crews, small vehicles, rapid intervention vehicles. And the UHP gives us the advantage of water mist, water delivered at high velocity, high pressure, and extremely efficient. Instead of concentrating on the base of the flame, we concentrate on the ceiling void, and we try to neutralize the superheated column. And once we've done that, then only we enter the room. And so we have now mitigated the possibility of a flashback. And so it took us some time. It took some footwork to get to the right answers. It also took a lot of external criticism, which we had to work through, and eventually we had to just ignore it. Because if you bother too much about external criticism, you know, there's a chance that you may fall for it. And so we just looked past that and created small fire crews. And we even, still today, we give recognition to firefighter 1 and 2. It's not the qualification that is the challenge in our country. The challenge is that if you pick somebody from specific training centers that are accredited for firefighter 1 and 2, you don't always get the same standards.
So there are uneven standards.
There's uneven standards.
So do you have your own training course to bring people up to the same level, or no?
Training periods, yes.
Oh, training periods.
So let's begin with how we recruit. So when we recruit and we look for somebody raw from the street, from school,
no experience,
no experience whatsoever, we would take them in as recruits. At no point would they enter a building. And just by the way, we specialize in building fires, not veld fires, not wildfire, building fires. And so for a period of time, the recruit will not even enter the building, probably 2 years or so.
Too dangerous, right?
Too dangerous, yeah. And then when there's enough of them, and enough by the sufficient number would be around 12 to 25 of them, we take them on Hell Week, H-E-L-L, for those that don't understand hell. And Hell Week is intended to be just that, hell. And at Hell Week, we actually conduct Hell Week at Bass Lake, which is the training aqua facility, where also the police train their divers. It's a well-known landmark. And we take our recruits for Hell Week, and if they make Hell Week, then we make them an offer for a cadetship. And once they're cadets, now we start training them in-house. And the training is aggressive, and it is it's rather rapid. We don't waste time. We prepare them for entering the building. That's what we prepare them for. And we also have layers of PPE, for instance. We will not give a cadet full PPE, because that would imply that he's ready to enter the building.
That he's trained and ready to
go. So he's not. And so he just doesn't even get past the front door. And then the first operational functions they'll have is salvage and working in the cold zone in the building, so to speak. And so that's the approach. And but then once we deem them qualified to enter a building, the progress they make is aggressive.
So they
progressive.
They start as interns.
Yes.
Then they can become cadets.
Yes.
And then if they get through, then they eventually become firefighters.
Yes. Even if we take in somebody that already has firefighter 1 and 2.
You still start.
And it doesn't matter where it is, they start at the bottom. We don't take officers in from outside. We have before, but we are now strong enough to be able to always promote inside of the company. And so that our people also don't lose faith in our doctrines, and they don't lose faith in us as management. We prefer to do internal promotions.
So I mentioned capital outlays. It's very expensive to run firefighting services, specialized equipment, pump trucks, things like that. Are those the things manufactured in South Africa, or do they come from abroad? And I imagine that's quite a capital outlay challenge.
Yeah, the fire engines that we have, the pumpers, or the engines as they're known in America, we acquired as used vehicles, second-hand, but in mint condition.
Well, generally speaking,
Yeah.
Chief, fire departments do a really good job maintaining their equipment, so
Yeah.
I imagine
Yeah.
that we're in good shape.
And so our maintenance is of a very high standard. We have tankers and engines, and we just don't have ladders or platforms. But we do all our building firefighting, are interior attacks. So even high rises, we just do an interior attack. And so it does take a different mindset from what we used to working with ladders and platforms. But we've been coping so far, and I cannot foresee that in the near future we'll have this serious need for ladders. We do not work with master streams. There's not enough water in this city to feed a master stream. You just won't have enough water in the hydrant line. And so it's sort of counterproductive. I would imagine there's space for use of a ladder in rescues, water rescues. We've got the XK rower that gives us serious challenges. Had you had a ladder, you could work at the negative angle, and you could, but we just don't have it, so we improvise. And as far as the capitalizing of the company, from the start we have gone out and gotten clients that would subscribe to our service on monthly retainers, and that's been carrying the service.
Excellent. So that does raise a question. It makes me think about this. You mentioned ladders. That's why I thought about it. If you live in New York, you live in Tokyo, you live in San Francisco, you've got high rises, and they present fire challenges for firefighting services. So here in Gauteng, I've noticed more skyscrapers, I would call them. They're not like New York or Tokyo, but they are significantly tall buildings in Sandton and elsewhere going up. Do the public services or the private services have the ability to address fires in those buildings? Is that a challenge that's not been addressed here?
Certain of them.
I'm not trying to scare the people that are making towers.
No. Certain of the metro councils definitely have the ability to do external work or defensive work. The longer I'm involved with fire services, the more I'm convinced that any attack should be internal to begin with. I watch a whole lot of material on New York, I spent much time watching material on New York high-rise firefighting, and I'm always surprised how much of the work is done by internal crews before master streams are even considered. Because you've got firefighters in the building, you can't put master stream into the building while the firefighters there. You'll roast them out and steam them out, and so the bulk of the work is done with an internal attack anyways. And so the difference, I think, there's a difference between the buildings that were built post 1990 and pre-1990 in our case. 1990 was when the national building regulations came out, And any new building is so well compartmentalized and so
That you can isolate the fire.
you can isolate the fire in almost in the room of origin.
That's incredible.
You know, there's more danger in a dwelling fire today than in a high-rise building because you can evacuate people into the stairwell and they'll be safe. It's a 2-hour fire-rated call. You don't even have to take them to street level. In a house, you've got people sleeping and children, and you don't have that in a high-rise building. So the same with the major malls. It sounds, when you talk about a potential fire in a mall, it sounds really serious and life-threatening. But it doesn't have to be. Our malls were built mostly after 1990, and the systems that are built in there, smoke extraction systems and the fire escape routes and compartmentalization and sprinkler systems and whatever else is built in there, really mitigates such a lot of the risk that I deem it today that if we have a lot of, in South Africa, a lot of thatch roof fires, and these are the ones that I think have the potential for life loss. Yes, last year on the 31st of August, we had a building fire in 80 Albert Street. And there, 76 people died there. We were there. We were first responders. We rescued 43 people, and 4 of them jumped to their death, 2 of them to their death. And so we do have that, but those are excessively and extremely old buildings that have been so-called hijacked.
Misused.
Misused. I don't agree with the term hijack. They're paying rent to somebody.
Exactly.
Then you haven't hijacked it if you're paying rent. But so that building is the fire is still under review by the commission. So there are those exceptions. But normally, if a building was erected after 1990, it's quite possible to control the fire in there, to suppress it, and to successfully extinguish it.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because sitting here at the table, I'm looking at a layout. May I lift this?
Yeah, sure.
So a map of
this building.
This building. So this building has a layout, and when you go into buildings like this around the country, you're going to find this, especially in high rise. This, I imagine, could be an aid to a firefighter as you're going through the building. Yeah. But whereas when you go to a residential, you look at the wide variety of residential homes and shapes and sizes and layouts. It's confusing, South Africa. It's not like we have some kind of cookie cutter approach to housing in America where the developments are all the same. But here, one house to the next is completely different. And if you don't know, you've never been there, which is normally the case, you have some challenges when you go into a
we attended a house fire in Bloemfontein just last night, night before last night. And there were 5 people injured, 7 people injured, 4 adults and 3 children. And we brought 2 dogs out of the house fire. The potential for life loss is far bigger in a house than it is in a commercial building. And of course we understand the international rules of engagement, that if there's a life in the building, I'm prepared to give my life. We swear it with an oath all over the show. And if there's a life in the building, I'm prepared to give my life. If there's no life in the building, I'll do my utmost to limit the loss in the building and the assets and the business. If there's no possibility of salvaging the building and there's no life endangered, then I'll sacrifice the building respectfully.
To protect the surrounding areas.
To protect the surrounding areas, and also to not just throw firefighters into conditions that
could cost them
there's no value. They're gonna demolish the building afterwards anyways.
Yeah.
It happened here with the Bank of Lisbon. There was a life loss of 3 firefighters there, and then they demolished the building. So
what a waste.
You've got it. There's a line to be drawn somewhere in the operation where the incident commander's got to be strong enough to take a decision in the face of it all. And I think it lies on the operational doctrine brings the better solution to the challenge. So it's a combination then of the actual design criteria of the building and the rules of engagement. How strictly are they used?
Well, this raises another question, Chief, and that is, with the challenges that have been presented, especially last year, but over the past several years with Eskom unable to deliver safe, reliable electricity for South Africans. Many would say not even affordable these days.
Yeah.
But with power surges up and down, with transformers blowing, with all this happening, that must present a challenge with residential fires, particularly in non-traditional areas or not built up areas. Do we have a fire?
Car fire, vehicle fire.
Car, it's a vehicle fire. So see, that it's real world, folks. You got a vehicle fire to respond to right now. So so that's one aspect of it. So as the electricity issue led to more fires and caused damage, and the other one is that do you get a lot of challenges with fires that originate from people not using proper electrical equipment, illegal electrical hookups, and things like that?
Yeah, I think there's a number of angles on just the electricity side, and so the one is of course that people would leave stoves on. They don't turn them down when the power goes down, and then when the power comes back on, they're gone for takeaway foods or pick up something, and then the item is now charged, and that causes a fire. And you could have illegal connections that would under certain circumstances be an issue. There's the issue of electric substations and electrical transformers burning. In this city or in this footprint, the central Gauteng footprint, just the last year we must have dealt with close to 20 sidewalk mini subs that were. And so what happens is that they're oil based, and with a power failure the carbon builds up, and then eventually there's so much carbon in the unit that it just overheats and it bursts and it burns. So electrical issues bring a large percentage of the fires that we have.
Oh, that's hectic. Can I show that?
Sure.
So here's a car fire as it's happening right now, folks. Look at that. Wow, that is hectic. Whew. Glad that's not my car.
And so for car fires, we developed, about 5 years ago, we developed a 2-hour rated fire sheet. And so when the guys arrive there, they will use the UHP water just to trigger the temperature, just to bring it down a couple of degrees, and they'll draw a fire sheet over that car. And that fire will be out in less than a minute.
Well, let me ask you this question. I mean, because as a guy that's in the Army, this is something, always prepare for things, and we always kept these in our vehicles. But is it a smart idea? Is it clever for folks to keep a small extinguisher in their boot in case they have a car fire?
Yeah, it's always good to have an extinguisher in your car. Sometimes, or to a degree, it could be a false sense of security.
Sure.
Because if a fire is that far progressed that you've just now seen, no fire extinguisher will take that out.
Oh, that one, no, there's no way.
I just won't do it.
No, the pumper truck's not going to put that out either.
Yeah.
That's going to burn to a cinder.
And if people are not really trained to understand the limits of safety when they're using a fire extinguisher, they could actually hurt themselves by getting too close to it, for instance. A dry powder fire extinguisher will suppress the fire. It will give you the impression that it's extinguished.
But it's not.
But it's not, because the car will just reignite. At that kind of temperature, you're talking 450 Celsius plus.
Yeah.
You don't just extinguish a fire with a handheld fire extinguisher.
With 1 pound, 2 pounds,
Yeah.
1 kg. Yeah, so fire services. There are public fire services we talked about, and it's a private fire service. I imagine that you probably have some kind of working relationship with the public services, and do you complement each other? Is that how it works?
Firstly, I think we try to recognize each other as co-professionals. That needs to be understood. So we arrive at a fire together with the city's fire department. It doesn't matter which city it is now. It could be any one of the Gauteng fire brigades or Free State brigade. Whoever arrives first establishes incident command.
Sure.
And when the other service arrives, there's immediate liaison between the two services to say, we've done this, that, and the other. Would you like to take over command because it's your jurisdiction? Mm-hmm. The term that we use, and I think it's an NFPA term also, is the authority having jurisdiction. and that's the city council, and so it's really their responsibility and their fire, and so, but mostly we just decide quickly. This has already been done, you just carry on doing it, and we'll do external or peripheral work. We'll supply water to you, or the other way around. And so, yeah, I don't think especially at grassroots level, there's a whole lot of goodwill between all of us here.
No, I think it's a very good point. And, you know, as a military person, it's the chain of command matters.
Yes.
And it sounds like the same thing when fighting fires. You can't show up to a crisis, particularly a fire, which can just get out of control in moments, not minutes, but moments. Yeah. You can't show up and have a disunity of command. So as you said, those arrive first, you have an incident commander, and then you work through that as you go forward. I think that's a really important thing, and people don't always realize that. When you're responding to a crisis, someone's got to be in charge. You can't have 25 chiefs.
Yeah. What's more important probably concerning your question is the level of discipline that the various services have, and then also the way that they interpret the rules of engagement. Those are the contributing factors to us being able to work together or not. If a service is not disciplined, it means that the incident command issues may multiply, and it really is not to the advantage of the operation. And if they don't understand the rules of engagement, if a city brigade doesn't understand the rules of engagement, then nobody knows where the cutoff point is. And there's a battery limit in safety. You can come this far and then it becomes really dangerous. And so night before last we had a Mayday call from our staff again. And I would say we have a Mayday call maybe once a quarter, maybe once every 3 or 4 months we've got a Mayday call from inside the building. The RITs move in and extract the personnel, or they are guided out by radio and so on. And so our approach to radio communication, for instance, there's not a single firefighter that enters a building that doesn't have a radio in their hand. And so everybody's got communication specifically for this purpose of calling Mayday. And so we prepare ourselves for the injury, but when it arrives, it's still a shock, but at least we prepared for it. And so you can't decide on the behalf of another service, the municipal service, for instance, that they must also approach rules of engagement in the same way. Rules of engagement is an NFPA standard, and so you can decide to either use it or not use it, but if you don't use it, the question arises, on what level do you then cooperate? Because how do they then call Mayday? How do they get extracted? Do they have an RIT? And so those are the questions. But you learn as you go about the various departments, how well they prepared for rules of engagement. So you understand them. Yeah.
No, I think it's rather important. So a couple more questions and we'll wrap up here. The first one I want to ask you is that, having come from the Army, you know, chain of command, discipline, you're singing my song here, talking about these things, and also teamwork. That's a key part of what's going on here, and safety is always paramount. So it sounds to me, and to the layperson I would imagine who listen, is that a firefighting service is very much like a military organization from a standpoint of those things. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, it is. Firstly, when we were considering rank structure, we took on the American structure. So we've got a fire chief, and any rank that has the term chief in it, like deputy chief or battalion chief, we address each other as chiefs. And so we implemented that. And then we've got captains and lieutenants, and then down the line it becomes senior firemen and so on. And so, but our code of discipline is extreme. It's just extreme. I say go, you go. I say come, you come. I do nothing, you do nothing. Because it's obvious that that's the only way that you can operate in that environment. It's a hostile environment, and we look for a certain level of aggression in people when we appoint them. Because you need aggression when you engage. But you must be able to control your aggression, that you don't become a bully.
Sure.
And so it's a very fine balance, but I think it's a well understood balance.
Excellent.
And so discipline is extremely important to us. Yeah.
So here's a question. I'm not sure how this plays out in South Africa, but we've seen in America, and we talk about volunteer fires, but also paid fire services that are run by the government for the most part. We've seen women enter the field. Women have become firefighters. That's been well received, poorly received, depends on where you're at in America. Are women entering the field here in South Africa, or is it a field they really haven't got into?
They entered the field in roughly about 1995, at which stage the term fireman then sort of fell by the wayside and it became firefighters, the same as in America. So, but in our brigade, we still only have a single gender, and it's male.
Okay. Well, Chief Engelbrecht, before we wrap up here, I'd like to give you a chance to share whatever you think is important with folks about fire safety or about this service. And if you want to make a plug and tell folks where we're at and what this organization is, and maybe if they want to subscribe to the services, you're welcome to do that. So, sir, the floor is yours.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, the best way to register for cover at your residential address, there's a button there that you press and you do the transaction. It's a credit card transaction. For commercial and industrial, you contact us. We make an assessment of your building and the operation, and we then make you a proposal in SLA, which carries the fees and so on.
A service level agreement?
It's a service level agreement, yes, and it's our contracts are normally 36-month contracts. And so having a contract with us gives you the guarantee that we will respond to you. Just last August, we had the exceptional busy day with 10 simultaneous incidents. Just former week, we had 7 incidents simultaneously. And so we can deal with it, but we need to have you on our books, so to speak, to guarantee you that we will respond to your address. The question often comes, but what if I just call you ad hoc? Well, you can try that with your security service and see if they will take that deal and say, well, I don't want to sign up with you, but I want to call you ad hoc when the criminal is in my yard. And I don't think that'll work with anything like that. It's an emergency service. It's costly. It's got to be paid by somebody. And hence the retainer, and then once, of course, we do attend to the fire, then we give you a bill, you pass the bill on to your insurer, the insurer pays you, you pay us. And so we've never had major issues with this approach in the 7 years. And yeah, people can easily go to the website. It's fireops.co.za, and most of the information is there. And if you want to leave a message for myself, Chief Engelbrecht, and I'll pick it up and respond to you. We're good at two-way communication. We like engaging with the public. We befriend what we call Aunt Gertie. Aunt Gertie is important to us.
So, Chief, what was that website again for the service?
It's fireopssa.co.za.
Looks like we have someone else coming in. They get to join us.
This is our CEO. This is the vet.
Welcome. We're live right now.
Colonel Wyatt.
Can we get him up in here? Is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Okay.
Let me take center stage.
Yeah. Why don't you take the middle here, Devet? Come in the middle. And we'll take your microphone there. Oops. Fell to the floor. Oh. It's all right. Don't move. Let me find where it's at. There it is. Oh, it's on the floor. Sorry if you're... Got it. Okay. Folks, if you're hearing some banging, my apologies for that.
The interesting thing...
So just clip that on your lapel there.
Do you want to just stop there for a moment? Can you do that?
I can't on live.
But you can... Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Let's go. So, but Chris has got a couple of we've got mutual friends.
Mutual contacts that we know, yes.
Us, him, you just don't know it yet.
You will after the broadcast.
But you'll know that. And so he's just interested in knowing how we run he's from America, obviously you can hear from the accent.
Yeah.
And he's just interested in how we are running this brigade.
Okay, wonderful.
Well, Devet, thanks for coming in. We just, I think, covered most of it. I have to say that you're probably one of the youngest CEOs I've ever met, so congratulations.
Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
It is a compliment. So how did you get into this? Because it was in the family? Because your dad did it, or?
Yeah, so, we all started off, let's say, after school, getting into the insurance industry. So Wynand and myself, we started working for a company called Collaborative Risk Applications, and we did assessments on the mines, basically basing their monthly premium that they pay to the insurers on the risk that we've inspected. Flew down to the insurers underwriters once a year in London, and then present to them the basic risks that are involved on the mines, and that would be basing their premium monthly that they would pay to the insurers on whatever it is that we said. So basically got the love of the fire industry since a young age. I was obviously born in the fire department, not the physical fire department. I was born in.
Do you have a Dalmatian at home?
No, I don't. Unfortunately.
Oh, you did.
So was born in Sandton Fire Station. At the time my dad was the operational fire chief. For Sandton. And I think fire runs in our veins. We can never get away from it. But slowly but surely, after school, just building myself up into a position where, just bigger and better, up until this time where my dad and I, we always promised ourselves that we would do good business together. And in 2021, I had to fill some big shoes when my dad got sick. And he would have handed the company over to me later that year, and then we just pulled everything a little bit closer. And been building an empire for the last two years and 6 months. Really been building an empire, getting our network to be our net worth, and we've been very successful by God's grace.
Well, you're in a leadership role, of course, as a CEO, and it sounds like you're leading the company quite well. But do you have experience as a fireman as well, or?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I
don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah,
He's a CEO, but he knows nothing about fire. No.
No, sure. No, so I think under the grooming of our fire chief, he's never had anyone get it easy.
Yep.
So I had to go through the cadet program. I had to
start at the bottom, just like everybody else.
Like everybody else. Get to the point where you understand the business, the inside out of the business. Start at the bottom of the food chain and work yourself up. But I don't think it was to the detriment. It was for the success of it all.
Of course.
And I would recommend to anybody not just to jump the food chain because of your surname, but to really work yourself up so that you understand what you're talking about when you address a certain thing from a leadership role. If you don't understand what those crews are going through, there's not much you can say about it. So
No, you really can't relate to it.
very appreciative of
Unless you've been there.
the routes that we've come. Yeah.
Excellent. So what's your biggest challenge? As you said, you were kind of thrown into it a little quicker than expected. What has been your biggest challenge, or what is your currently biggest challenge? Is it getting good firefighters? Is it too many fires to respond to? Is it funding? I mean, everyone's got a challenge.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything that you just mentioned.
Oh, okay. I got it all right.
So, it's, I like the analogy that Wynand always uses. He says that, not sure if you know this, but, rapid growth can also mean that you die quickly. And if you look at a plant, or actually, what's onkruid?
Weed.
If you look at weed, so weed killer is actually a steroid. So when you spray weed killer onto the plant or onto the weed, it actually rapidly allows the weed to grow.
Shortens its
And
lifespan.
then it's a steroid, right? So overnight it grows itself to death. And I think that's what we've been trying as a company not to do, is grow ourselves to death.
At a measured pace.
A measured pace, and my job is not only just to be a great supporting function for operational guys, the floor wardens, the captains, battalion chiefs, deputy chiefs, and all of that, but also to apply the brake every now and again to say, look, we're growing too quickly. Let's just pull it back a little bit, and that's been, I would say, part and parcel. One of the most successes is just to apply the brake every now and again to say we're running too quickly. We don't want to grow ourselves to death. And but certainly, firefighters, employing firefighters getting opportunities at other companies, vehicles, equipment. You can imagine equipment
Sure.
and so forth. So yeah, we've had a rapid growth, and with that comes great responsibility. We recently launched in Bloemfontein, 2 weeks ago. We're going to launch in KZN in the next three to 4 weeks. So I mean, it's crazy what's busy happening. But it does come with challenges, of course. Yeah.
Well, that's a good point you make. A lot of corporations, like in retail or manufacturing, take on too much.
Yeah.
They go for growth, and suddenly they've got all this debt, or suddenly they've whittled down or watered down their talent base and their skill. And this is a profession you can't afford to water down your talent base. You've got to have qualified firefighters, and you've got to have serviceable equipment.
Exactly.
So you can't cut corners in that. And that's, I'm sure that's important. You mentioned Bloemfontein, Vanuatu also said that, and KZN. It's a big country, South Africa. I mean, it's huge from one place to another. Do you envision at some point continuing that growth, or is that kind of the pace you're at right now? Is it Bloemfontein and KZN? And where in KZN is it coming to, if we can ask?
Yeah, so I think the first question is, as long as we don't stagnate.
Okay.
As long as we keep...
So you want continual growth?
Continual growth, maybe in KZN establish maybe 3 fire stations, and then maybe grow another station in Joburg, and then also grow to about 3 stations in Bloemfontein. And then, as the opportunities come and, insurance companies get involved and or, bigger corporate companies, we could establish in Cape Town, and certainly look at the 3 major cities, with being KZN, Joburg and Bloemfontein, and obviously then Cape Town. There's enough potential for us to grow. Can we save the entire country? No, we can't. It's so physically impossible. We can't have a station on every small little, town and so forth. But we certainly try our best to service there where we see the potential. Yeah.
Now, there's something I didn't ask of Wynand. I'll ask of you, Devet, and that is, firefighters are also very much first responders in every manner. You've got emergency medical technicians. You've got rescue workers. And I'm thinking, was it in PE where the building collapsed recently? I think it was PE, or was it George? It was in George. I'm sorry, George. It was in George. Yeah, the building collapsed a few weeks ago in George. They sent firefighters and rescue crews from Cape Town over there. So many people came on the site. Are those other capabilities things that you have, or you look in the future? Because you mentioned going to the Western Cape perhaps eventually. Of course, if you're in the Western Cape, you've got to have a lot of fembos fires, and that's a big issue there for those folks. They have to respond to those. So are those other capabilities that you have already, or that you maybe will have in the future?
Look, currently we are very limited to supplying our support services, to specialized, let's call it missions, for instance, like, sending firefighters from us, to a specific project. Just because of the vast majority of structural fires that we attend to here on a day-to-day basis. Should the opportunity come where, some organization would come to us and ask us for assistance, we'd certainly look into that. But it would mean drawing, crew strength from the direct crew on a day-to-day basis. We'd love to be part of, massive projects, but it's a bit challenging.
It's a big bite.
Yeah, it's a big bite.
It's a huge get. Yeah. All right. Well, that's interesting. So I gave Wynand a chance as we wrapped up, just as you came in, to share with us his thoughts and maybe make a pitch, let people know about the service. He did that, and now I'll give the company another opportunity, another bite at the apple, as we have the CEO here. So any thoughts or anything you'd like to share with people about firefighting or about the service here that they might want to take advantage of?
Look, I think we've got a fair share of our challenges, being a third world country. I think it's important for the viewers to know that it's a third world country, and municipal services has their challenges and so forth. But as a company, our vision and our mission is really that we don't want to take jobs away from anybody, but be a functioning support structure to whatever there is, and man up and have the heart for the flame, and get to the end user, which at that moment is the most important person in town. Get to them as fast as possible and deliver a service to them. Whether it be rescue services or firefighting services. For us, we're a community-based company. we write off so many fires, to either a training or CSI spend or just a Good Samaritan project.
Things you should have gotten revenue from.
Yes, that we're just saying to the community, look, it's obvious that, this family or these individuals or this corporate can't afford it. And
I actually told him her name was Aunt Gertie.
yeah, Aunt Gertie. We usually refer to her as Aunt Gertie. And, still have that ability to connect with our end users to make sure that we're not doing this just for the monetary benefits.
Sure.
But that it's a community-based company, and
It's a community-based service.
we really care about your safety. And when it's all been said and done, to have that ability to service 533,000 clients, which we're currently assisting in.
Didn't know it was that many. That's impressive.
In Joburg. So.
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up here. And my thanks to Vinant and also to Devet. But before I do, I want to say, folks, listen. Firefighters are unsung heroes. They really are. People don't realize the amount of physical effort that goes into it, the condition you must be in, the kit you've got to carry. That stuff is not light.
Sure.
Taking your life and putting in the line to save someone else's life on a daily basis. As a combat veteran in America, people have great respect for the military and always thank me for my service. I always remind them to thank a police officer, an EMT, and a firefighter, because they put their lives on the line every single day. So think about that. It's a huge risk. And we lose firefighters in wildfires. We lose them here in South Africa in veld fires sometimes. And we lose them in residential buildings as well. And that's a sad thing. But they take that risk to save your lives. And so from Johannesburg, this is Chris for Chris Wyatt Reports with these gentlemen who've shared their thoughts about what's going on here. I want to thank you for your time. If you're not a subscriber, please become one by hitting that button right there. Hey, it doesn't cost anything. We don't charge you for a subscription. It's free. Just hit the button, help us grow the numbers, and get the word out there. Thank you very much. And I'll be back on the air later tonight with a news program from Gauteng before I head back down to Cape Town, only to turn around and come right back on Saturday because the Bulls won and Glasgow won, so the final is at Loftus. And if you're not at Loftus, you're a square. Anyway, I'll see you later on. Thanks a lot, folks. Go Bulls. Cheers, and be safe out there.
Thank you, Chris.